In this video, I want to talk about social trust and why social trust is the key for all civilizations. Now, many people think that money carries power. That's why we invest so much in getting money. Now, money is practical in exchanging goods and services. For example, if I want to purchase this aloe vera from a local shop, I hand over the money and I can bring this with me. Why? Because the shop offers this and I hand over money, some value to them that they now can use also. So I invest in them and I can take this with me. So that's the ritual of purchasing or buying. And before money came into being, people just exchanged goods just like that. But when communities became bigger and bigger and people began to specialize more, it became difficult to exchange, for example, fish for grain. Because you need to store fish, or because else it begins to rot. And back then there were no refrigerators. So what are you going to do if someone has a surplus of fish that they can't get rid of? But you don't want the fish to begin to stink also, because that will cause other problems in the environment. So money is a practical tool. That's the only thing it's useful for. But a lot of people invest everything in money. Now, I've explained before, currency are the coins and other cash. That's currency. Currency is just what you use to exchange goods and services. Money is currency in practice. For example, if you're in Japan, you use Japanese yen. If you come with euros in Japan and you want to pay, it's just currency. It's European currency, but it's not money in Japan. It's money in Europe in the context where it's used. So money is currency in practice when it's used. So we understand that. So money or currency has no power of its own. It doesn't. Currency becomes money when you can use it. And what turns currency into money? The social trust. Because before 2002, for example, in the Netherlands you had the Dutch guilder. If you use the Dutch guilder, you could pay. Today, Dutch guilder is useless. You can't accept it anymore. So it has to do with the context in which currency circulates. What makes currency into money and what makes money effective in the long run is social trust. Without social trust, no company, no corporation, no club, no family, no community, no society, and no, how would I say, church will be able to function. For human beings, social trust is vital. It's similar to blood running through your body. If you have no blood running through your body doesn't get the nutrients it needs, you die. So if you lose a lot of blood from your body, you die. We know that. The same way it is with social trust. If social trust is not sufficient in a community, the community will die. In the sense that people will turn on one another, people will become anxious, they will become fearful, and they'll become self-destructive. So social trust is important for keeping a community sane and healthy. So, the number one thing every community needs is social trust, not money. Now, economic relevance is important for every group and every individual. But that economic relevance, or to be economically relevant, is only useful in a context of social trust. Outside of social trust, you can get ahead with economic relevance. That's true. But economic relevance without social trust tends to turn into tribal conflict. That's what you see between gangs. That gangs go toward one another, or drug dealers go toward one another, because there's no social trust in the context. That's why the economic relevance turns into bitter rivalry. So, how powerful is social trust? I just explained to it. It's the blood of the community. So let me give an example to you. If you have currency, let's say in Korea, and a Korean looks at the currency like this one over here. This is 1001. And when the Korean looks at the currency, he will see flowers, he will see some buildings in a style that's native to their country, and they'll see this old wise man over there. And that man looks like his own father or grandfather or other men in his community. So he will look at it and he will recognize himself. And because there is this self-validation of him seeing himself in the symbols, he becomes attached to it and he begins to perceive it as valuable. What if, for example, you would be in, let me say, Sweden, for example, and they would come up with a currency like this. This native Swede would look at it and he would consider it quite weird because he does not recognize people like this around him. He does not recognize those buildings. So in Swedish currency, they put Swedish symbols that carry symbolic relevance to the Swedish community. That's why in the euro, that's meant for the European Union, they put things in a Greek style. They even draw the continent Europe on it. And they put Apollo in it, which is the god that they worship. Well, that's devil worship's another thing, but they know the currency needs to reflect the people itself, for the people to value it. Now I want you to consider this. Because all corporations out there, all companies, all businesses that remain successful, they understand this key knowledge. Symbols are powerful. Symbols impact the minds of people. So if you want people to be attached or attracted to what you're doing, make sure you have some symbolic power over their mind. And the way you achieve symbolic power is by making images that are similar to them, or making images of things that are relevant in their lives. That's how you do it. So once you have this symbolic power over people, now people will recognize themselves in what you have to offer, because they associate what you have to offer with those symbols. That's why corporations always put their label or logo on their products, is to generate a mind attachment to them. Because without this mind attachment, you wouldn't value what they have to offer you. And because of this mind attachment, you now invest in this attachment by purchasing their goods. And that's how you end up spending money on them. And all of you think, why do I spend so much money on that? I didn't really need that thing to begin with. It is because you are mentally and emotionally invested in the symbolic attachment you have to that to that corporation, or to that flag of that country, or whatever. Because symbolic attachment brings forth social trust. That's how the human mind operates. When there's a symbolic attachment that everyone shares, there's social trust. Because everyone has this symbolic attachment as a basis. And because everyone has the same basis, they can all rely on that basis, even when interpersonal relationships don't work out. And this symbolic attachment is expressed in currency, as I've shown on to you. It's also expressed in language. That's why you have things as cuss words or swear words. Those are words that everyone agrees those are forbidden. Why are they forbidden? Nobody cares why they're forbidden. You just don't use them. And that becomes another symbolic attachment people hold on to. That's why when they tend to use words that they consider cuss words, people tend to become upset. Why? Because you don't get along with the symbolic basis they are invested in. Those words you're using don't cause harm directly. It's their own reaction to those words that cause harm onto them. But they don't want to face that about themselves, because they also need to accept that there are many other things they are attached to that they can't really explain. They don't want to face themselves, so they just expect you to make sure that they don't have to challenge themselves, but you're just getting along with what they expect. That is the narcissistic attitude of fallen mankind. People have their symbolic attachments to things that they haven't examined, And now they don't want to look at that. So they want you to make sure they don't have to look at themselves. So if they can't stand certain words, just don't use those words, because when you use one of those words, they are triggered. And now, because you decided that you want to use your mouth freely as a human being, you don't give in to their restriction, now they feel rejected. Now this pain of rejection, they take it out on you. And then they'll say you just shouldn't use cuss words. Why? Because they don't look at themselves. Because why are certain words bad if they are made up? So why do we make up bad words that we now have to avoid? What's that about? But if people have to face themselves, they have to face everything. So fallen mankind is narcissistic in a sense. They want you to be restricted by their own restrictions so they are at ease. That's what worldly people are. Now, human beings should have social trust anyway. Social trust and symbolic investments are natural to human beings, whether they are redeemed or they are still in a fallen state. But people in a fallen state, they become abusive with their symbolic attachments. In a sense that when you don't validate those symbolic attachments, they've turned into gods. Now you need to pay with your life. That's how it goes with them. Because those symbolic attachments are just that, symbolic attachments. But worldlings turn their symbolic attachments into gods. So they invest way too much in them. So, have you ever had that someone became upset with you and you couldn't figure out why they were upset? It is because there's something they're holding on to that they don't want to face, that they don't want to deal with, whether it's something their parents conditioned them into or something that they were conned into believing. Now you don't get along with that thing that they are invested in, that they don't want to face. So now it's easier for them to blame it on you than to look within. So now they have to make you the target so that they can feel at ease treating you badly. Because when they are attacking you and treating you badly, their attention is away from whatever it is they're holding on to. So it's a form of self-medication for them to be at ease, so that they don't have to deal with the turmoil that comes from challenging the thing that they are invested in. So they have their gods that they're holding on to, that are not worth it, and those gods are a burden on them, they're heavy on them, but that heaviness is only revealed when there's no relief. So when someone does not agree with those gods, they want to dump the weight of those gods on that individual. That's where scapegoating comes from. So, symbolic attachment and social trust. All humans and all human communities need it. So, money is not of primary importance. Social trust is. That's why countries, or say leaders that are smart, they make sure that the symbolic attachment on their population is homogeneous. Why? Because when things are homogeneous, so similar, the fallen mind feels more comfortable in it. Because remember, human beings in a fallen state, they turn their symbolic attachments into gods. So any challenge to those symbolic attachments is perceived as paying an attack on them personally, because there's no difference in their minds between their symbolic attachments and them as a human being. They don't see that difference, nor do they care about the difference. So for fallen people, you need to have an homogeneous setting of strict conformity for them to remain at ease. That's why leftist ideas as cultural diversity or multiculturalism is not effective in maintaining social peace amongst worldlings. Multiculturalism does work in a corporate setting, when you have, or on universities in general, but when it comes to daily life in communities, it's detrimental to worldlings, because worldlings, they are in idolatry all the time. Yes, worldlings are in idolatry all the time. So, to protect their idols, they can't be exposed to too many other options. Because the moment there are other options, to have to face that, what they're holding on to is not of vital importance. But it's the vital importance that they perceive about that thing, whether it's a social expectation or whether it's whatever it is. That is what makes them feel secure. And this sense of security that they have, that with other people that cause them to get along so easily. So you'll have a group of people, for example, that they were all traumatized as children by their parents and their uncles and older relatives. So now they, as new generation, they're now entering their 30s and they're having kids of their own. And now they are uncomfortable with what they've went through as a child. But because everyone around them went through the same thing, and none of them dare to challenge it, then that is the God that they're holding on to. Never talk back to older people, or never talk back to your parents. Just a restriction that was put on them, and that restriction was used at their expense. Because all of them, as adults, have issues that they've accumulated by that collective restriction. But because everyone is traumatized and affected by it, and because collectively you have pubs or you have red light districts, you have all kinds of ways to relieve the tensions of the traumas, people have to face the collective traumas they've encountered by how they were raised as a community. So now when they have children, they now, because they don't want to look at themselves, they don't have an excuse to relieve themselves on their children like their parents did to them and how their grandparents did to their parents. And as long as this continues, there will be ease. People will recognize one another in that community, and people will form friendships more quickly. They'll be more motivated to volunteer. They'll be more motivated to tolerate economic exploitation. They'll be more willing to tolerate, how would I say, other toxic restrictions, and they are more likely to be sexually invested in the community. But also because there is ease. Because nobody has to challenge anything. Everyone has this basis of denial by these toxic restrictions they all hold on to. If one of those community members would say, hold on a minute, why is my father screaming at me like that? Why can't he just communicate to me like a human being? When I was a little kid, he used to scream at me, and he could be very kind and soft and all of that, but the moment he didn't have his way, you had to watch out. Why did I have to watch out when I was a kid for a grown man who has options? But I was a child, I had no options. Let's say one individual begins to think, and this individual now begins to speak out his thoughts, pointing out facts that a lot of things in that community don't add up. What do you think is going to happen to the symbolic attachment all those people are holding on to? It begins to disintegrate. And when this begins to disintegrate, the social trust will go down. Because the social trust in this case is based on denial of the obvious. So if one individual breaks a taboo by speaking about child abuse or speaking about defective parents, everyone in the community feels threatened because now they all have to face things that they don't want to face. And the ease in the community will disappear the moment everyone has to face things, because they don't really want to face things. So if they have to face things, they're going to be frustrated, and this frustration will lead to domestic violence. It will lead to crime. It will lead to fights that might never be resolved. So people can sense that things will fall apart the moment anyone questions the false god. So the individual that speaks out is punished immediately. And in often cases, they are killed by the community. That's how it goes amongst worldlings. Now, social trust is important, as well as symbolic attachment. That's obvious. But worldlings turn symbolic attachments into gods, and their gods are based on avoiding life. Believers have symbolic attachments to one another, as well as social trust, but our basis is to glorify the Heavenly Father. So the basis of believers and the basis of worldlings are completely different, and they are opposed to one another. Because worldlings, as I mentioned before, they want to avoid life, while the Heavenly Father wants us to manage the earth on His behalf. So worldlings wants to avoid all challenges on the earth, just having relief with one another through denial. But the Heavenly Father wants us to be active on the earth on His behalf and to face all challenges and to challenge all evil. That is what the Heavenly Father wants of us. This goes against the relief seeking of worldlings. So the base of worldlings and believers are completely different. The base of beliefs is light, the base of worldlings is darkness. And those two don't go together. Why? Because the light will shut down the darkness. So the darkness will always feel threatened by the light. That's how it goes. So because of the darkness was threatened by the light, the darkness will persecute the light. That's what's going on here on the earth. So realize that social trust is the blood of every human community. Money is not that powerful. It is effective when you have to make transactions or pay for stuff. And it's effective if you want to bribe people to get things done quicker. That's bribe. That is effective, but it's not powerful. What carries power in the world is symbolism. Symbolism carries power. I don't know who it was again that said signs, symbols rule the world. But that's the truth, because without symbolic attachment, there's no social trust. So, once you know that symbols carry once you know that symbols can generate power over people's minds, you now know that if you want to achieve something in this life, you need to go to the symbolic level first. First symbolic level, and with the symbolic level you seek some spiritual aid, and then you begin to deal with the finances. Symbolic first, because you need to understand what the context is, then spiritual aid, and then finances. But as believers, we have the spiritual already because we have the Holy Spirit. So for us, it's just a symbolic that's powered by the power of the Holy Spirit we have, and then it bursts out in finances. Worldlings in general, they begin with finances. They don't care about the symbology. For them, the symbology is BS. To them, the symbology is stupid. They don't want to hear about it. And that's the effective thing of worldlings. That's why they're so easily deceived. Worldlings begin with finances. And when that doesn't work out, they go to the spiritual. They totally bypass the symbolic. You think symbols don't have power? Okay. Then go to The Hague and put a Japanese flag big on top of the building over there and see what happens. Or don't do this because this will get out of hand. But if you open a shop somewhere in Europe, but especially Germany or Denmark or Netherlands, put a swastika on it. It's not a neo-Nazi shop, it's a Buddhist shop, and in Buddhism they use swastikas. But put a swastika over there and see what happens. People will associate it with the violence that happened during the Second World War and the aftermath of it, so emotionally they'll be upset with it, even though they themselves they have never been through it. Or if you're in the United States, you step on American flag or you burn American flag, see what happens. Symbolic power comes before financial power. Because it's based on symbolic power that there is social power. But a lot of folks, they just want the finances. Finances are the result of symbolic and social power, not the initiation of it. So, this video has been long, and I hope my voice was not too loud. Just realize that as believers, we need to have proper knowledge. If we don't use proper knowledge, Satan can take an advantage of us. And it happens all the time. I see too many believers worrying about finances, not understanding that finances are the result of symbolic and social investment. So, use the knowledge I've given to you in a Christ-centered way. Be at peace.